Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Documentary Club. It's great to see everybody out there that was there for the premiere. I really appreciate that. And I want to make sure that I give a shout out to everybody that was in the chat room. Well, it looks like we got just Rhonda. I missed the doggone premiere. I got caught up reading an article and lost track of time. I'll be back here in a few minutes, though. Well, we appreciate you coming in, just Rhonda. Appreciate everybody out there who was at the premiere or people who are just joining us for the live. We're talking about Exhibit A. So it's a 4-part documentary series on Netflix, streaming on Netflix right now. This one is really pretty much for the most hardest core true crime fanatics who really want to understand how the sciences work, how they can be manipulated, how they're supposed to be used. And in this documentary series gives us kind of 4 examples of how the misuse can sometimes come to a negative result. But before we get to that, I wanted to welcome Jack in. Jack, how are you doing today? Thanks for being here with me.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I'm doing good. Yeah, it's and hello, Rhonda, and everyone else out in the live chat that's listening in. This is a little slice of forensics that are used every day in our American justice system, our criminal justice system, uh, and probably more often incorrectly than we probably will ever know. I don't know what the percentages are, but I would bet there are many. Because they just took for each one of these disciplines in forensics and presented a case and how sideways this stuff can go and the problems it can cause.
Absolutely. I mean, I mentioned it in the premiere, and I will start to sound like a broken record here pretty soon. But in the first episode, talking about video and video manipulation, and you have that guy, Knox, I think it is, Mr. Knox. And Knox is talking about Hemingway and how things aren't really there and we're bending reality, and if you can only see it through my lens, and video's just a trick. Here's the thing. Here's a guy saying video is just a trick, and then he goes, but I'm an expert in the tricks. Do you see what
Right.
I'm saying? Like, now watch
Right.
me manipulate it and make it even more of a trick for you. And it doesn't add up. And maybe I was a little harsh on him saying he's not an expert. He may have expertise in some areas, but just trying to get someone to say, I know that you see a lake there. I know that you see a 6'1" man walking through that door, but I need to show you that he's actually 5'9" or
Right.
vice versa. You know what I
Right.
mean? And it's if you could see the video from this angle, and only if you could. It just bugged me to no end. That was just, and I think it bugs me even more to know that people like him are in the system and are utilized in our system and paid as official experts in a court of law.
Yeah, he did several things that really irritated me with how he went and he finally went to the I guess to to that store, that crime scene. Um, And then he creates this video from a different perspective, trying to show how it could have been this guy that they arrested. It really is indicative to me that I'm thinking, okay, maybe he is, like I said, some sort of an expert, but he didn't go to, he doesn't have a degree. He did something different, I think, with, for the police. He took photos and different things of crime scenes they would call him in, and then ultimately then that turned into taking video, and that's kind of I think where he explained he got his start, if I'm remembering correctly. Um, his you nailed it pretty good. This guy started talking about Hemingway and the mirage out there. I know it's not there, but I can see it. But then when you get there, you're going there, but it's not really there. I'm thinking to myself, what? Are, are we talking about the same thing here?
Yeah, it blows my mind to as I said, that there are people like Knox in the justice system as a regular. And I know I've said this countless times. Our system is only as good as the people that we have.
Hey, think about think about a Michael Kelly in Brendan's case, and that just
Exactly.
you get these trash people. I mean, to me, he was nothing short of a scammer. So the system to allow this type of individual into the system. When I saw that, way back when, I thought to myself, "What? How low can we go of who we're going to allow to give any kind of credible information in a case?"
I think one of the craziest parts about this episode 1 video forensics is that I talked about how there's like a measuring tape on the door. You can see
Yeah,
it right now on the screen if you're watching. You can see the video, and you can see that that's the perpetrator standing next to some hash marks on the door.
yeah,
And they didn't seem to use that. He had to make a new model, and they did all this technology when they just kind of gave up on the analog of it. Like, there's the guy standing next to the hash mark. What do you need what do you need video analysis for?
well, they
Yeah,
ignored
you
it.
could say, you know what? Maybe
They had to ignore it.
the camera is like above his head. So if we move the camera down, I mean, you could do that with your eye right now at home. If you move your eye down a little bit, the things in the background go up. Okay, so let's move it down a foot. What does that change? A half inch?
If that, but
You know what I mean? Like,
you could still put somebody, another guy, the
yeah,
same
and
height
say,
as
hey,
this guy.
where does he? We know how tall this guy is.
That's
Let's
right.
put him, and we'll find the person, and we'll have him stand in a similar fashion, kind of leaning as he goes out the door, turning out the door. But no, they didn't do and I think maybe that's something that needs to be talked about a little bit, is that we kind of give up on the analog technology because we're so engrossed with the digital, the AI, the new. This is, you know, we can't give up on the simple. Do you know what I mean?
That's
Like,
exactly. Th This good old fashioned police court. This
just
guy is
look.
standing right beside this tape measure over here. It shows he's considerably taller than what this clerk described. And
So
she
I have
says, "I was looking at the guy in the eye."
there
That's
you
what
go. The clerk says, I'm looking at the guy in the eye. I'm like 5'2" or something.
right.
Yeah, whatever. Just bring another guy in here and I'll line him up and say, this is the guy. This is about the same height. And then measure that guy against the door and go, well, this guy's 5'7". There's no way. And when you look at the Powell, I believe his name is, he's a tall ass guy.
Yeah, 6'3".
And yeah, and we
Big
had
dude.
those pictures in the premiere that just, they went in an actual forensic scientist took real tools, captured this guy's actual size, and then used superimposition to put him in the door well, and it goes, wow, he's way taller than the guy who was the perpetrator.
That's right. To me, it's case closed, but those cops and that prosecutor wanted this Powell guy. They wanted him clearly because he was, and he was a pretty busy activist there in Killeen, and I'm saying I'm butchering that name. I apologize. That Killeen, Texas, and he wouldn't take any crap off of him, producing his music and so forth and so on. And this military personnel. I'm just assuming, I have never researched it, getting harassed by the local police there, and for literally no reason, to collect money. They're getting tickets that are costing these military personnel hundreds, if not thousands, of dollars to pay. This as a source of income for that city and county. And if somebody, I guess, does something wrong, a minor infraction shouldn't cost that kind of money. I mean, that's a lot of money to the everyday person, to come up with. But he was pretty vocal, so they had a pretty good heart on for this guy, and
Yeah, he seemed like I think you said he was a thorn in their side in the premiere, or
oh yeah,
something to that effect. And we didn't show it in the premiere, but because I couldn't play the music because I didn't want to get copywritten. But he had created a lot of music
yes,
around the issues of the town, whether that's he had one named Soldier, and that was really about, I think it was Fort Hood. He lived around Fort Hood. I could be wrong about that. But lived near an army base, a military base installation, and he had wrote songs about how the soldiers were important for the community and how much respect he had. And then he'd also make songs about how horrible the cops were. So, they just see him around and they go, this guy's putting out music. He's sitting on the street corner, or he was living in a hotel, like one of these hotels that have been converted into like long-term living, and paying a daily fee. Maybe it was just a regular hotel, paying it and going outside and shaking down the other like temporary residents. So like, new people would come in to stay at the hotel, and then he goes and said, hey, come on, I got your music for you, $3, $5, whatever, buy my
right,
CD.
right,
And so the cops know what he's up to. They've probably heard his music. He hates the cops. They're like, well, we hate you too. If we find you doing something wrong, we're definitely gonna lock you up on it. And as you said in the premiere, he had a record. He was one of those guys that cops would love to take down, and they let their greed in the way, and they, we've said this many times, they trying to make it work. They made the pieces fit. He's 6'1", but you know what, we'll manipulate the video evidence and make it look like it's him if you look through my lens. So it's pretty wild case.
yeah. There was another guy that they interviewed. We didn't really talk too much about it in the premiere. This guy that still lived there, and he says that I've done way more than George has, way more, and he's pretty insistent. And he didn't get arrested. He's still there outside, free, talking, and so I think that's kind of an eye-opening comparison, because clearly they wanted this guy, and for this knock guy, for that all that to come into the trial and so forth. I mean, this guy spent years behind bars, years,
Yeah.
12 years, I think.
I got a comment from Rhonda, and it says, in my criminalistics class in college, we learned how to do video measurement to figure out the height of a suspect.
There you go.
And I'm pretty interested. I wonder, how long ago was that class that you took, Rhonda, and how much has it changed since then, unless you just
Well,
took it?
I don't think it's been too terribly long ago that Ronald
Well,
was in.
it's just better. Oh, 216. So yeah, not that long ago. But even in 8 years, the technology has improved quite a bit, and they're always trying to make things more accurate and easier for us to use. So,
Well,
but
we
it's not
definitely know that camera technology has definitely improved in that time frame.
absolutely. And if the camera technology has improved, the analysis technology almost likely has improved as well. So,
That's right.
in the next 15 to 20 years, I would say, maybe even sooner, 10 years, I think a lot of these cameras are going to be switched out, and we're going to be using artificial intelligence, a topic that it's a hot topic with me that we've talked about in the past. And I've also done interviews with people, who are experts in facial recognition. And I just feel like we're going to be able to identify suspects a lot easier unless they have a mask on. I think it's going to be harder and harder as we move into the future, and it should be, and as it should be.
Well, yeah, if you're going to break the law, that's the risk you take, and
Mhm.
you can't do the time, you're going to do the crime. That, And I know that people get desperate. They do. I get it. At the same time, if you're going to live in society, there are boundaries, and those boundaries must be respected. Can't just go take somebody else's shit. You can't do it.
Absolutely. And
So,
then the second episode was also really interesting, Jack. Blood splatter.
oh boy,
I feel like this episode could have been 4 episodes, and they could have kept going and giving me more examples. I just can't get enough of this because it is a science. I don't know. You don't want to throw the word science around too much. It is a science. It is a science that has a lot of gray area. And as you know, the experts in the documentary said, we've learned stuff in the past 10 years we didn't know.
that's right.
We didn't know how different fabrics interact with blood and how that can change your result. And they just kind of talked about it briefly. I wish we would have had a little bit more about that in the documentary. I think out of all of them, this one was probably the most interesting one for me, just because I am quite interested in blood splatter and how blood interacts and how it can tell a story. One thing that I do know, and you can comment on this as well, is that one dot of blood can't tell a story.
No,
usually.
no,
Especially one microscopic dot that has no trail. If you have a blood drop and it has a trail, you could say it came from that way. It came from this way. But when it's just a microscopic dot.
Well, I think therein lies the real flaw with this case, because as far as anyone in the world could ever think or know for sure, those other little dots that were on that old nightgown could have been grape juice or something. It could have been anything. And that one microscopic dot could have come from anywhere. It could have came from a damn hangnail for all we know.
Yeah, and unless you can determine, and I said that even in the premiere, I said, even if it was Ed's blood, it doesn't determine that she killed him. Now, if you had a nightgown that had thousands of micro dots all over it, I would say, well, that's blowback from a shotgun.
That's right.
I think a jury could understand that.
Well, what makes this case even worse is the gun was left at the scene didn't belong to either one of them. It was
belonged to a criminal.
It belonged to a criminal. And this guy, he was an asshole. He was a complete asshole, construction boss that was hated by a lot of people. He had just been threatened the week prior to his murder. It's on a recorded phone call, and they didn't do anything with it. Nothing at the time, in real time. So, and he fled. This guy that left a message fled to Vietnam, where he can't be extradited. So he's out. So we're going to go after someone else, right? That's kind of the way I see it. We're going to close this case. So, what about the wife? Yeah, we looked at her. We didn't have anything.
Well, that's what they said in the documentary. We brought all the evidence to a grand jury, and they were like, "You don't have the evidence to indict her."
Right?
Sorry. And I made the point in the premiere. I was like, "Oh, those cold case, the original detectives, they don't know what they're doing, but I can solve it." It's just this hubris. And I guess you should have that attitude sometimes when you're trying to, you should have confidence in yourself. But when your technique is, let's find a microscopic dot of a color. Basically, that's all they had. It wasn't blood. It was a color. It's it. And then they come and find out it's not blood. And then you still indict her.
Yep.
What?
Yep.
It's cranberry juice. She must have done it. Lock her up.
And she got convicted, and she's still in prison.
It's insane.
Yep.
This is insane. You know what I mean? And I'm not, I never, usually you hear examples of cold case files and you go, this is really good. This is good work. This is This is money well spent. It's slow, it's methodical, but we want to close these cases out. But we don't want to close them out just to close them out.
No. And again, I think this was a science that was, well, I say a science, this was an examination by this newer, however many years later, by this newer lab tech that was apparently pretty good. He was very methodical and found all these micro dots of whatever the hell was on that nightgown. It got misapplied, a little misdirection here to say, well, yep, that's blood. But you can't prove it's blood, but I'm telling you, it's blood. Micro spray.
Then test it and prove that it's blood. Otherwise, it's not blood.
No, that's right. Until you prove it's blood, it can't just be a suggestion that it's blood.
Right.
And that be the truth.
And then at that, it's still inconclusive of a crime.
That's right. There was nothing in that house that pointed to her. Wasn't her gun. It wasn't the guy's gun.
Yeah, it's wild. And then it was in the cadaver case in episode 3 where they used the example cadaver dogs, where they used the example of the missing girl. And they finally, or they test her, like her belongings, her blanket, her car seat, all that stuff.
Yeah.
And they find some, also again, microscopic or trace, I think they said trace elements of, decomp, which is blood. And they were like, yeah, but you could get that trace amount of blood from cutting your cheek or having a nosebleed or scratching yourself, as kids often do with their sharp little nails. You know what I mean? It could be from anything.
That's right.
But they're so sure of themselves. This is conclusive evidence that the father killed the child because we found trace elements of blood. It's wild. And I guess, it speaks to our system, how if you can convince a jury of anything, you can make the case. Well, unfortunately,
as a father that's had 5 small children, I'm telling you that unless you're vigilant about cleaning your car seats, those things can get like really nasty, like really quickly. You literally have to stay on top of it. And even then, you can't keep them clean. You just can't. I mean, kids just, they slobber and it's just impossible. So again, science misapplied really badly in this case. Number one, it was mentioned, we did talk about this a little bit in the premiere. They flew in this guy and his dogs from the UK. Why would you do that? Why would you bring people in from across the pond into a case? I mean, there's cadaver dogs all over the United States, I'm sure locally.
So, yeah. Where's your patriotism at least? Why are you outsourcing? Just give that money to an American. You know what I mean? I'm sorry to be like America Central, but why would you go out of house? Why would you go out of the country?
I'm sure the guy from the UK is probably a fine guy. I don't have a problem with him personally. It's just, why would you bring somebody all the way across the pond? Is it because everyone local that's you talk to is going to say you got to find a source? You must need a source.
Because you're cherry picking,
or it's irrelevant. Without a source, it's irrelevant.
Yeah, you're cherry picking an expert. You just keep going through the phone book or your contacts list until you find someone that will agree with your theory, and then you hire him. I mean, right. That's not science. That's not how our justice system should be. It's, yeah, that guy, both of the experts in episode 1 and 2, I don't know, maybe the guy with the dog has had successful results, searching for missing people or searching, but he did not demonstrate the correct expertise in this case, in the case that he was in.
Well, again, it's misapplied. It's misdirection because they showed all those examples of these dogs hitting on certain things, but that doesn't mean it's confusing because I think to a juror and maybe even the judge, if you don't specifically say this dog is detecting the scent of biological decay and not necessarily this little girl, whoever, it's misdirection. You have to be very clear about that.
It's
And
true.
I don't think they were. And I think it's misunderstood completely.
Yeah, we got to demand more conclusive evidence. And excuse me, one of these things that I have brought up, and it's been a long time since I mentioned this, is that there is no such thing as jury training, right? And I've heard some people argue that it might be a good idea for us to have juror training. And I've also heard people go as far as to say, you know what? Maybe we should have jurors who are trained jurors, and that's their
Professional
job.
jurors.
And that's their
Professional
job.
jurors. Yeah.
Professional juror. That's what I do. I in my off time, I'm briefed on cases. I go through regular training. I'm updated on the technologies instead of somebody who has no interest in science, doesn't understand it, and now they're making the determination on someone's guilt or innocence based on things they don't quite grasp. And then you have
Right.
a charlatan come in with, bells and whistles and don't believe your lying eyes. The lake isn't there. Believe me. And then they convince him. And I don't know. So
This is part of the fallacy and problems within the system. It is. It's a huge problem within the system because these prosecutors and defense attorneys are well aware that a lot of people that they seat on a jury have no real clue about, especially when you start getting into the more technical aspects of forensics and other things that are complicated that they haven't studied. They've never been around it. They have
right.
no real idea.
And even if the juror is educated, it's not necessarily in their field. If
Right.
I went, I'm educated, get a master's degree, almost got a doctorate degree, and if I was a juror, I'm starting from pretty much scratch when it comes to the forensic techniques. Like, they'd have to explain it to me. Yes, I can understand it. Yes, I can read at a high level. I can process materials, but even an educated juror, unless they're a forensic in that field of forensics, it's all Greek.
Well, therein lies another problem: is making sure that a prosecutor or a defense attorney is not misleading a jury when they try to explain their version of whatever. That's another problem that I think gets through the system and is never challenged by the defense. I think that's another part of the problem. Professional jurors, this was kind of a side conversation. You brought it up. So,
It's fun.
I agree, but I think it's one of those disciplines, kind of like, and we talked about this quite a bit, you and I did. It's kind of like the drug analyst, how to fix a drug scandal, crime lab analyst. You get into this side part of the criminal justice system. If we were to ever go that direction, we have paid professional jurors. It would have to be monitored constantly, monitored,
Yeah.
and audited to make sure
it's the only way to ensure anything, Jack, is to have a big brother. You have to monitor it. You have to audit it. Now, these things cost money, but it's either pay more money or get bad outcomes. Which one do you want?
You have to manage it, and we're failing. We're just failing all over that. We're flailing around like a fish out of water in so many of these areas, and it's got to be corrected. And you're right, it costs money.
Kay makes a good point, and welcome, Kay. Thanks for Kay's a member of the channel. You guys can also become a member of the channel by clicking the join membership button. Kay makes a really good point, and that is, and I think that's what you were alluding to a little bit, Jack, was professional jurors could be infiltrated with corruption too. And
Yeah.
I think that's the point you're making, is that we'd really
Yes.
have to have oversight. We'd really have to be,
Yeah.
if you want to be a professional juror, we pay you a decent salary, but your income and your books and everything isn't open. Like we can audit your finances. We
We can audit
regularly
your
check
life.
in
We
on
can,
you. We can,
yeah, you're gonna have, yeah,
right.
you're gonna have to agree to be really monitored, and we can basically audit your life at any time.
And there are
Yeah.
government jobs like that already, you know?
Sure there are. Sure there are.
Can you believe
Absolutely.
it?
It's
The
kind of,
golf course is calling me. Why is the golf course calling me?
well, maybe they need you to come out and play around.
Yeah, I think they're like, yeah, we heard about you. We heard about
Yeah.
your chip in on 18 the other day.
Woo, sweet.
No,
For a birdie?
I'm lying. I'm lying about that. But
Um,
I am playing
damn.
better golf. I am playing better golf a lot.
How many have you chipped in? I mean, like for a birdie
How
or an
many
eagle?
times? I chipped
Yeah.
in either earlier this year or late last year
Sweet.
for a birdie on hole 1. My
Oh
local
man,
course.
that's a
Yeah,
pump up.
it's nice to start off -1 when after 1.
On,
So
on hole 1 and get a chip in. That's
you
gold,
know what?
man.
There's
I'm
a
done.
tournament. There's a tournament at Volcano Golf Course, and I had called and asked them. This was a month ago. What are the details? I don't see any details, so I think that they were actually calling me back. So maybe they'll leave a voicemail and I get to the bottom of that. But
Sweet.
yeah, I love golf. You guys, that's no secret. Once I figured out my shoulder turn, then it's all getting better. So
Well, as a side
professional
note,
jurors, I think
I
it's
played
something
golf
to
for
explore.
absolutely. I mean, there are people. I mean, it's kind of like holding a security clearance for me. Now,
Right.
there's been problems there too. I readily admit that, but there has to be a willingness. There has to be a willingness to step that direction and to understand what it's going to take to ensure that that system works like it should.
Or maybe we have the same system of jurors that we select, but we put them through a training before they're given a case. Like, oh, this case revolves around video forensics and blood splatter. So you have to go through these 2 training modules before you can be a juror on this case, because we want you to be educated on a little bit about the technology, so you're not going in there blind.
Right.
I know that there's an idea is worth is only as much as its execution, but and I'm not the one that's floated this originally. It's not my idea, but I just think some sort of I don't know, how do I say this? Every
Remedial
technology, yeah.
understanding.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, every
think about
technology. Go ahead.
the poor slobs in some of the first DNA cases way back. When DNA got introduced, it's repeatable, it works, it's the real deal. This is the gold standard of our newest tool in forensics to, accuse someone. They did it. We found their DNA all over the damn place. We can prove that it's this person. It's a 1 out of 400 billion chances that it's someone else. The odds of that it being another person are so astronomical. You're like, lock him up. But
Right.
understanding, because I remember when I first heard about DNA, and this is long gone. I'm like, what? And I heard about DNA. Don't get me wrong, but
The first time I heard about DNA with a lot of us of my generation from the movie E.T.
Oh
kid,
yeah,
they're in the science lab, and the kid yells out, "It's DNA!"
Yeah,
and we didn't know anything about it. You know what I mean? He's just saying it's DNA. He didn't know what that meant.
Well, no, I mean, I heard DNA, so many years ago, decades ago. It's a word or acronym, whatever it stands for. Well, I can't even pronounce it. And RNA, but understanding what it really is and how much impact it's had on the criminal justice system. I think thinking about these poor slobs, these poor jurists in the beginning, trying to understand that technology. And it's come so far since then. It's maddening.
It is. And, that kind of moves into episode 4 that we were talking about with mixture DNA and touch DNA. and how that is not an exact science. I think one of the
No.
most important parts that was mentioned is the forensic scientist. He says, if you got a single profile, it's cut and dry. It's really easy. When you get down into mixtures, it gets really complicated, and that's where the mistakes can be made. And I know that if you're interested in this kind of touch DNA and these like fragments of DNA, I'm going to try to find this documentary if I can before we close out. But there's a documentary about using this same kind of DNA, touch DNA and residual DNA, in identifying ancient humans in a cave. I think they're Denisovans. And there's this technology that they developed that they can take a sample of soil and run it through their process, and they can take portions of DNA because they don't have complete profiles, but they have the technology now that they can use samples of soil, and through that they can identify full DNA profiles. It's
What were they
pretty
called?
wild.
You said they were called the Denisovans?
Denisovans.
Denisovans.
Denisovans are similar to the Neanderthal. So they're
Okay.
another ancient human species that is extinct.
Subset. Okay.
That's right. And so the Denisovans are from northern Russia, I believe, in a cave system. And one of the interesting things that I remember about them is that they found the oldest threaded needle and thread.
Really?
And it's 50,000 years old.
Oh my
The
God.
Denisovans were sewing 50,000 years ago. Blows your mind.
Never
But I got to
heard,
look in.
never heard
Yeah.
of it.
Yeah.
If you find it, let me know. Send it to
I'm
me.
going to try to find that documentary here if I got a second. But my point is that the DNA technology is advancing faster than we can keep, that our understandings and a jury's understanding can keep up. And when that happens, there's a lot of room for misunderstanding, right? Every technology that gets evolved is another opportunity to have a misunderstanding in a case. That's how I feel.
Yeah, in this particular case too, it was really troublesome what this New York, I don't think I wrote down the acronym of what it was actually called, but this New York City, maybe I did write it down. This DNA lab, largest in the world, and have every, advantage, I guess, that you could probably find. They developed this forensic statistical tool, whereas they could dump in these partial mixture samples into this software and generate these numbers and say, yeah, well, we can include you. It doesn't necessarily say it's you for sure. You just can't be excluded. But as anyone knows with statistics, you can pretty much rope in
You can cook the
anyone, and
books.
you can. I think that says a lot about what their goal was, and it's not about the truth. It's just about being able to get a conviction, and to me, that's a real problem. It was a real eye opener for this particular case. How many people? Because I think they may even touched on it a little bit. How many people have been convicted because of this statistical software that lab used?
And one of the experts said that her and many of the other experts in the field said every one of those cases questionable now how they used it. So that's a problem.
Yeah. So this case was it was really, in a way, another really tragic one, because that kid that these guys chased down, they freaking blinded him in his right eye. He lost his vision. Yeah,
right.
There were a number of things about this case that were really troublesome. Number one, he's in the hospital. He wakes up in the hospital, and he doesn't get questioned by the police immediately. He's obviously been assaulted, and there's no cops there to talk to him about it. So they end up going to the police station, and it's stamped case closed.
He said it's closed, case closed.
Yeah, yeah.
Like the victim just arrives at the police station, and they're like, "Oh, we got this one. It's already done." What do you mean? That guy tried to poke my eye out.
Yep.
Yeah, case closed.
Case closed. It doesn't matter. You're fine. You still got another eye.
You still got another eye.
Yeah, you've got two, man. What's the problem?
Yeah, that was an interesting case in episode 4, talking about it's that the group of, I think it's Hasidic Jews who have their own little 30-block radius in New York City, and they kind of patrol. What's it called?
Yeah,
I forget the name, but anyway, they had like their like local patrol, and all of a sudden there's a black gentleman walking in their neighborhood, and there had been a history of people's cars been broken into. So let's go beat this guy down. It must be him. He's a black guy in our neighborhood at 4 a.m. He must be
he doesn't belong here. It's got to be him. So let's go beat his ass.
Let's go beat his ass. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's chase him down and challenge him. Or whatever they were going to originally.
And meanwhile, as you're all over there beating up on this innocent guy, now there's cover for the real criminal to break into more cars. You know what I mean? Like, as soon as you take your eye off the ball, and now you're like, this must be our perpetrator. Let everybody who's on this neighborhood watch is only focused on this. Now the other guy 2 blocks away can go and steal more cars. So you got to get it right, and you can't over pursue like that. And the guy obviously took it too far if he was trying to gouge his eye out. That's where I think is the difference between this was an altercation and a misunderstanding to this is a straight up assault, is when he tried to poke his eye out.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I mean, this kid, he finally gets cornered, and he starts fighting with this one person and broke their glasses. And he said, I guess that's when the gloves came off or something of that nature. That's when they really went after him. And this big Jewish guy, he got his hands around his neck and started ramming his thumb in this kid's eye. And there were already, I don't know, 10 or 15, 20 of them. How they couldn't subdue this one kid with that many guys, there's a little telling. But this other guy I wanted to mention before we end today, the guy that got accused, this Jewish guy that got accused of committing this crime, that was a whole other selection. And thank God he got out of it, but it still wrecked his life for a while. It
wasn't even him.
Right? Wasn't even him.
You wonder why he got targeted then. You know what I mean? Why was he kind of angled at the suspect, and to protect the actual perpetrator? I don't know.
Yeah, I think so. I think some names and so forth got floated around, and this guy's photograph ended up here or there, whatever. But this guy's he didn't do anything wrong, and he gets roped in, and I'm feel certain it was to protect this one guy that was clearly associated with a lot of New York City police and various people in authority. He was protected from the outset, and he was there. You can see him in at least 2 of the videos that were shot. This is a big dude. He was there and was participating in some capacity.
So I just, someone asked a question. Who was that? And Kay asked, what year was this? And so I just looked it up, and it says that in 2013 is when this happened. But I have an article here that says that he was awarded $4.5 million after the attack. So almost 10 years later, or 10 years ago, I'm sorry, he won a judgment of 4.5 million.
Who did?
Taj, the
Oh, the
4.5 million after alleged attack by religious patrol. Yep. So he was awarded. So obviously he sued them civilly, maybe?
Was this the guy that got arrested? Taj, is that his name? I can't remember.
Taj is the victim. He's the guy that got his eye poked out.
Okay. I was wondering.
Yeah. Okay. So he did win, and this was just what? Good. In 2022.
Good. Because the whole case was terrible.
So in a lawsuit brought against the city, Patterson said police had inappropriate ties to the patrol, who are funded at least in part by the city. He also said that they botched his initial investigation.
They did.
He was awarded 4.5 million, of which 3 million is for past pain and suffering, and 1.5 is for the future, marking an end to a years-long saga, according to the documents.
Well, would you sell your eye and all the other shit that happened to you for $4.5 million? I wouldn't, but
$4.5 million is a lot of money, but I really, really like both eyes.
Sure, absolutely.
So I don't know if I could do that one. I don't know if I could take the money for the loss of an eye. You can't. I guess you could maybe replace it, but I don't think he is anyway. So yeah, the case was in 2013, and then it was ultimately settled in 2022. So
shouldn't take that long. That's another problem.
Unfortunately, and I'm not defending our slow justice system, but unfortunately, the wheels of justice move slowly, and I don't have an answer to speeding that up. I don't know.
Yeah.
Things just, more judges. No one wants their taxes to go up, right? You get more judges that cost more money. You want more prosecutors that cost more money.
But the standard, we talk about standards a lot and how they compare from one person to another, and how they don't. You think about criminal case versus civil case. In a criminal case, the defendant has a right to a speedy trial. That's what they choose. I'm ready to go. I didn't freaking do it. Let's go. Let's go to trial now. Civilly, that's a whole different ball of wax. In many ways, completely different. And I think therein lies part of the problem.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, I mean, they say justice delayed is justice denied, and I do subscribe to that usually. And our system is that you can demand a speedy trial, right? If you're accused and charged, you can demand a speedy trial. But the other is true, is that everything else goes slow. Everything takes time, and as I said, I don't have an answer for that other than, can you have more judges? Can we hire more prosecutors? Can we? That's the only way you're going to speed up the system, I think, because everything needs to go in front of a judge. And so, other than that, I don't know if there's an answer. I do want to give a shout out to T1. T1, nice to see you. Much love and respect for everyone. Thank you, T1, for joining in the chat. It's great to see you in chat. Just like everybody else who's been in there. Becca Chu, Kay, I don't recall. Dark Side was here earlier. Just Rhonda.
Yep.
And appreciate you guys. Hope you enjoy our little discussion about Exhibit A, which is still streaming on Netflix right now. You guys can go and check that out. What a cool documentary. I mean, here I'm looking at the IMDb rating, and it's giving it only a 6.6 out of 10. And
I think that's a little low.
It's a little low.
I think it's at least an 8 or a 9.
You're gonna go 8 on this one. I would say, yeah.
Yeah,
I'm gonna give 7.5, 8 on this one.
yeah,
That's where we're
at least that high. It you know, maybe I don't know. Maybe people are a little irritated because there are 4 separate stories within. It's like 4, like I said, 4 mini documentaries within one little series here, but it and they were pretty short. They were roughly 30 minutes. Didn't get too deep into anything, but just deep enough to really give you a good flavor of what they were talking about. I thought they did. I
yeah,
thought they did a really good job.
at least to highlight the misuses of the technology. I thought it was
That's right.
effective. And, and I
Yes.
think, I mentioned this earlier that if you're like a hardcore true crime buff or you're really interested in the sciences of it, you're gonna love this
Yeah.
documentary. If you're not,
Absolutely.
you're probably not gonna love it. And
That's
I
right.
could see that's why the ratings are a little lower on this one. But as
Well,
far as like,
it goes back to what you were talking about, a jury understanding the science.
that's right.
So, and a lot of people don't like to talk about it because they just can't get, they don't understand it. I'm not saying these people are dumb. They're not.
No,
They just,
no,
they it's not been explained to them in a way that, they can, digest it and say, okay, I got it.
right. Absolutely. It's not easy. And being a good communicator and being able to, that comes on my end as an educator, trying to deliver information clearly so people can understand it. And it's pretty challenging. It's not easy all the time to,
It can be.
yeah.
It can be very difficult.
Especially when you're dealing with a jury of randos, basically. Anybody who's got a driver's license is eligible to be on a jury, basically. I think that's usually how they get your information is when you sign up for a driver's license and
Once you
then
turn
you're
18,
on
yep, that's right. Once you turn 18, your name goes into the list of potential jurors. If you have a driver's license or state ID, boom, you get chosen.
like
I
so
actually got
many
a,
of us.
I actually got a jury summons personally last year. Of course, I couldn't go because of my situation, but
Mhm.
I had to go through a pretty significant process to get out of it.
Right.
It's not that I didn't want to do it. It was a murder case. I wanted to, but there's just no way. It's
Yeah, it
just not
would have been
possible.
too difficult for you to.
Well, it would have been very difficult for them, very difficult, and so that part that is true. Once you turn 18, get a driver's license or state ID, you are a potential juror.
Well, and as Just Rhonda said, voter registration is another way. I know that
Yes.
here in Hawaii, I just got it because I just renewed my driver's license 2 weeks ago. And there's like a carbon copy underneath my application that is a voter registration. So when you here in Hawaii, when you sign up for your license, you're automatically registered to vote. So it's kind of the same thing here.
It's the same thing here.
And I'm with Just Rhonda. She said I would love the opportunity to serve, but I wouldn't be allowed on a death penalty case. Well, maybe
I
not.
wouldn't either. No, I wouldn't either.
I probably wouldn't either because I would say that fundamentally I disagree with the death penalty, and then that would get me off right away.
Like a Cherie, jurors like you, Jax. Don't start calling me Judge Jax again. Don't do it.
Judge Jack. Judge J. Jack.
Yeah, you're tempted to do it. Just refrain. Hold yourself. Thanks, Cherie.
Yeah, I mean, I would love, and I feel like I'm in the same boat that I would love to be on a jury. I think it would be an interesting, and my own personal opinion here. A lot of people try to get out of it. They see it as, oh, this is such a burden on me. And for some people, I can understand. You got 4 kids, you're working 2 jobs. It's just not going to happen. I'm sorry. It's just not going to happen.
Right.
But for many of us who are not in circumstances like that, it's your civil responsibility.
Right.
It's not something like, oh, well, I don't want to do that, so I'm going to find an excuse to get out of it. I think that's.
Well, a lot of people do.
I know, but what I'm saying is we need to change the attitude, and we need to see it as this is my responsibility. This is
That's right.
a responsibility put on my shoulders as someone in society who,
Yep.
my number was called, and I need to go.
Well, I can tell you when I went to school, we were taught, once you become an adult, being part, if you ever call for jury duty, this is part of your civil duty that living in a free society calls for. It's part of our justice system.
Yeah.
And we were taught that. So we knew that potential.
Becca Chu brings up a good question. She said, a good comment. I used to want to be on a jury now, and now I wouldn't. It's because I'd be too worried that I would make a mistake. And I could see that, but at the same time, then err on the caution of the safe side.
Well,
you know what I mean? If you think like, well, I'm not quite sure on this one, then go not guilty.
Well, you can only make a decision based on what's put in front of you.
What's put in front of you.
If a prosecutor or a defense attorney or even the judge gives you bad information and you make a decision on it, is it really your fault? No.
And that's what the appeals system is for. Now, granted, that's a whole different can of worms, but that's what the appeals system is for.
Well, that's what the checks and balances are supposed to correct. Of course, they often don't. They often don't, as we see so badly in Brendan's case. It was just, but the appeals process often doesn't. I'm not going to get off on another tangent. I just think the state I think the pendulum has swung too far in the balance of the state and against this balance of justice. The scales, I look at the scales in my brain, and to me, the state has more advantages than the defense. And that exception only goes the other way. Is like, again, we talked a little bit about the Karen Read case before we started today. Unless you have a lawyer like this Alan Jackson that's defending Karen Read, this guy is a rock star. He is bad.
You mean the actual rock star, Alan Jackson?
No.
Country rock star, I should say.
No, it's not the same guy. Same name, not the same guy.
You said rock star, so you opened yourself up to that one, Chuck.
I did, but I mean, Alan Jackson is a country singer, so.
That's right.
I'm a little.
Okay, sorry.
No, you're fine. I got it right away. But this guy is really good, and he didn't miss anything. He is on it, even coming down the before the jury or when they got back to go to deliberate. There were the jury questionnaire. There were some things that were not clear on that jury instruction, especially when it came to the lesser two included charges.
Mm-hmm.
They were not clear. They really weren't. It was muddy, and he did not like it at all. And he basically told the judge, I want this reworded. And she says, well, it's kind of standard what we normally do. And he wouldn't accept that. He didn't want to accept the fact is, I don't really care what you normally do. I want this cleared up because it's confusing to the jury, and it could lead into problems later on.
Right. And if the judge doesn't consider that,
well, they can
use that as a point in the appeals, right? If they don't consider it.
Yeah, she denied his motion that morning, but then later that day, she changed her mind.
Well, you consult other people and you think about, is this going to be a sticking point in an appeals case? And then you don't want to give them that open door, so you concede.
It could have led to an automatic appeal. Automatic.
Right.
And he didn't want that. And he didn't want that confusion for the jury when they were during the deliberations. So anyway.
Well, I want to go back a couple comments because Just Rhonda has been firing off some good comments as well as others. But Just Rhonda and T1 also said, this is being on a jury. It's our civil duty. It's our duty as patriots. And we throw that term around a lot, patriot, right?
Well,
if you want to be patriotic, do your civil duty. This is important stuff.
Yeah.
Because you might find yourself on the other end someday, and you want to have people who are logical and
thoughtful.
right, and
very,
thoughtful.
yeah.
And you would want me on your jury.
Yep.
Becca Chu says, I can't take care of a house plant, and you want me to decide someone's fate?
Well,
You-
some people don't have a green thumb, Becca, but they have a heart thumb.
there
Use
you
your
go.
heart. Use your heart. And you got one, you know. That's my I get what you're saying. I do.
Hmm.
And you don't want that responsibility. I
Well, and
get that too.
she goes a
But
little
it's
further and she says, but what if they're guilty and I went not guilty, and then they go out and kill a bus filled with orphans, some horrible thing after they do.
it
But that's not your fault. That's not
no,
on you.
that's not
It's
on you.
on the
That's on them.
lawyers and the prosecutors for
And
not presenting a strong enough case.
and on that person that actually did the crime. That's not on
That's
you.
right. It's not on you. Yeah.
No.
You can't think of it that way. At least that's my opinion anyway.
I agree. I agree completely.
And she says, well, what if they are innocent and I went guilty and it's a wrongful conviction? I mean, this is what you have to, as a juror, consider. But then again, that's why we have the appeal system. And
Well, you know,
I would say always err on the side of caution. And if you just if you can't get guilty, that's why it's beyond the word beyond reasonable
doubt.
Right.
That's right. And if you something like that were to happen in real life, and that happened, you could always contact the defense, the prosecutor, and say, "Look, this is what we were presented at trial, and this is the reason I voted the way I did. But now, blah blah blah, we found out this, this, and this." But you can be vocal about it. And again, the fallacies of our system are not your fault.
Right.
We can't. There's not a perfect system, but if our system of justice was followed the way the laws were intended for it to be followed, and we don't have all these personalities. I'm a personality, but and I think Jeff would, and I think a lot of us would try to apply the spirit of the law as it's written in a criminal case, even a civil case.
Mm-hmm. Read a couple more comments. Just Rhonda says the Karen Reed jury struggled. Those who feel she's guilty would not budge, and why should they? If you're following evidence and trial testimony, honestly believe one way or the other, don't change your vote.
Agreed.
That's why we have in the system the option for the hung jury, because we couldn't come to a conclusion, and that's fair. Hey, we couldn't do it. You're going to need to find another group of 12 people and retry the case, and the prosecution needs to be more clear, etc. So,
well, we get into the problems here, this murky area for me and the Karen Reed case, and others can comment if they want. But you get a little bit into this murky area. Now we're involving a police officer that got shot. This cop is dead. And a lot of people, and I mean, I do too, to a degree, I guess. I really don't like to see a police officer get killed. I don't really care how they're killed, but mainly in the line of duty. Now, this guy they were partying. These people were drunker than hell. I told you they were wrecked. They'd been out drinking all night. Anyway, you've got this cop that's dead, and you've probably got a few on that jury that are going to hold someone accountable. She's it. She got tagged. Right, wrong, or indifferent. I think it was wrong. I mean, if you watch the case, I have no doubt this will be a documentary. I'm sure of it. It's such a fascinating look at the criminal justice system. Again, in Boston, I don't know how that somebody could not come along and say, look, we need to tell this story. But I'm sure that there are people on that jury that are going to hold someone accountable. She's been tagged, and they're not going to budge. A cop is dead. You're to blame.
So, I got an interesting question from T1. Why is 12 the magic number for a unanimous verdict? A couple things in there. Number one, just in the last few years, I think 5 or 10 years, have we required unanimous verdicts in all criminal? It used to not be that way. You just needed a majority, but the Supreme Court ruled, God, not that long ago, that now it must be 12 unanimous
Unanimous
votes
votes. Yeah.
in a criminal. Now, in the civil, it's different, but in a criminal, you got to be all in one way or the other. And then the other thing is why 12? And I just did a quick Google search, and because I'm interested as well. And so there's a couple different things. Danish towns in the northeast of England had hereditary lawmen, often 12 in the number, who decided legal disputes. In Wessex, in the southwest, charged 12 thanes in each area with keeping the peace. And in the 12th century, Henry II established that a jury of 12 should decide land disputes. So I think the number 12 it's just kind of been grandfathered in.
Yeah, because a lot of our laws are based on old British law, law of the seas or whatever. I don't remember exactly what that terminology is, but they were brought in and kind of twisted a little bit, tailored to our society. But you think about 12 people, you get a cross section of 12 just random people off the street. I think you've got enough voices in that mix to cover a good portion of the population. Does that make sense?
Yeah, you cross section. You're looking for a 5 people is not really a lot. It's not a pretty small number.
That's right.
50 is like too many people to deal with.
Right.
Here it says in this blog, in this website, that for federal trials, it could be as small as 6, but no more than 12. And then I have another comment here that said, it wouldn't surprise me, if the 12 jurors was rooted in Judeo-Christian tradition based on the 12 judges of the 12 tribes of Israel. I guess you could take that. 12 is an interesting number, in construction. I always wondered, why, 12 you can divide by 2 and it's 6. You can divide by 3 and it's 4. You can divide by 4 and it's 3. There's just a lot of different. 12 is an interesting number, just the way that the math works out.
Well,
but I also think you have a point about a cross section, right? You're trying to get a decent sample size.
Yeah, and I think that within that, the Supreme Court, I would never even try to think about what their level is of making decisions. But you think about it having to be unanimous, and that one voice that's over there in the corner saying, not guilty, because this is what I think happened. I'm not changing my vote because I don't think like you people do. You want this person convicted because of XYZ. I'm saying not guilty because of TUV. I see it differently, and I think that's fair. But I'm also not against exploring the idea of professional jurors either. I'm not. But again, it's another system that would have to be monitored closely.
Or training of jurors, or maybe you get selected for jury duty, and that means you cover for the next 6 months all the cases, right? I don't know. But then, it runs into a lot of problems, because then you're going to say, well, I'm a professional juror, but every time I go up for jury duty, the defense gets me kicked off because they don't like me, or they don't want me, or, you're allowed, I think in certain instances, you're allowed, every jurisdiction is a little different, but you're allowed, like, the defense is allowed 10 no votes.
10
with
strikes,
no,
yeah.
you don't need it. You don't need to, like, have any reason. There needs to be no logic behind it. You're just, I don't like this person. I don't want him to be my juror. Kick him off. And if that keeps happening, and I'm a professional juror and I keep getting kicked off, I'm just getting paid to do nothing. You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of things that would need to be considered, but I think these considerations are important. And I think having either a jury training or professional jurors or something that is a little bit more progressive towards today's situation, right?
Well,
every technology in the world has improved, but yet our justice system is stuck in the 1500s.
It's either that, or if you're going to be selected, brought in on a jury that requires, it's going to be showing some pretty sophisticated DNA or other scientific methodology or whatever, you're giving they give them at least a week or two really good instruction training by selected people that do this kind of thing that can explain it, so they understand when they go to trial. They understand what's going on. They really can grasp the concepts and the methodology. I don't know. I don't know something.
Yeah, I mean, these are interesting conversations that I think need to be had, and maybe they are being had in other, more official capacities. But yeah, juries are tough. Juries are, and we've seen it how many times in the documentaries we've covered that
Oh my
people
God.
have said, even in this one, in Exhibit A, they were like, you know what, I'm just going to take the time. I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm thinking about next week's episode, which I might as well plug right now. Next week, we are going to talk about the state of Alabama versus Brittany Smith. So I don't know
Oh
if you
boy.
guys have seen this one yet, but this is what we're going to talk about next week.
Yeah, it's a short documentary, which I typically, a lot of times we'll see documentaries say, well, they probably could have cut this or that. This one, I think they should have included a little bit more. I have questions about this case. There are issues for me, and we'll talk about that when we go do our thing. But yeah, I have questions in this case of things that I don't understand how they could have happened the way they did. We're missing information. All I'm saying.
So Becca Chu says, I may have seen it. Where can I watch it? It's now on Netflix. So it's streaming now on Netflix. State of Alabama versus Brittany Smith. It's a shorter documentary. So
Like 40 minutes total.
Yeah. So you can just cruise through this one, and not to spoil alert too much, but the point that I was making is that Brittany Smith ends up taking the deal because she was concerned. Am I going to leave my fate up to 12 jurors that I have no idea which way they're going to go?
That's right. Yeah, there are other considerations for her, and I get it. I do. I understand why she took the deal. So, James Crane, problem is the pros may become political positions, maybe a mixture of pros and laymen. Well, that's what I was saying, James. If we ever were to consider a professional jury system, it would have to be closely monitored. Closely monitored. It really couldn't be any other way. It's the same as we talked about how to fix a drug scandal, and it's such a far-reaching thing about these lab analysts and the damage they can do. There's another case. Buting actually posted here a few weeks ago on X. There's another criminal lab analyst that has been tinkering around with criminal cases for years. I don't think they know exactly how many, thousands of cases where she was throwing samples away that the defense could have used, that pointed to another direction. It's just she really, really jammed up a lot of cases. And she just got this, she'd been there 28, 29 years. They just let her retire, even though she's hosed up thousands of cases, potentially even more than that.
That's wild.
It is. And it's wrong to me. If you're going to do that, there has to be suitable punishment. There has to be consequences to your actions. I could never do that. Never. There's just no way. And I understand these people are required to, the expectation is you need to get done. You need to get on to the next case, the next case, the next. I get it.
Right. But
yeah,
we got to get it right.
You got to get it right.
It's about
exactly right.
outcomes, and as an educator, that is my focus, outcomes. I don't really, it doesn't matter as much how you get there. It's, did you get there? Did you get the right answer? To break it down, it doesn't matter if you deliver the best lesson plan ever. If the students didn't learn, it doesn't matter. And
Right.
if it doesn't matter how good your case is, if you don't get the right outcomes, it doesn't matter how good the technology is or how great your experts are. We want to get the accurate outcome. And so I'm very outcome oriented. And that's how I look at it, that our system is only as good as the outcomes. And that's how we should look at it. We should look at it. Are we getting accurate outcomes?
Yeah, and that brings in another discipline, and this is the prosecutor, who's really in charge of the case in total, not just their side, the state, but they're in charge also basically of the defense to make sure the defendant's rights are protected, that they turn over all discovery material. They don't just get to pick and choose what's relevant and what's irrelevant. I think that's so wrong because we see it clearly in many cases, not just the Avery and Dassey cases, but in many cases. And on top of that, evidence that doesn't really get reported. And I I feel strongly in the Avery case, there's still information that's been buried. You think about the
Mhm.
blunt and bloody instrument found in the raft. We didn't find out
Mhm.
about that until 2022. You know, 15 years after the case is done, the guys are in
Wow.
prison.
That's right.
So
T1's got a good question.
yeah,
Any chance, it's all in caps, so maybe any chance AI, I'm just kidding. Any chance AI will get involved in the decisions made in court cases? This was kind of floating around in my mind, T1, as we were having our discussion here today. It's almost like to me, it almost seems like it's inevitable based on the fact that there's just so much data. There's just so much information. And our system is so misses so many things. There's so many inaccuracies that it almost feels like we do need some assist from artificial intelligence, but I don't know to what degree that would be implemented. I just don't know where. And, there's so many question marks around it. One thing that I could see it as an investigative tool is if, an investigator had, thousands of pictures, thousands of reports, and they want to find a specific thing. I want to find out everybody who wore a green shirt in the area that day. And you can ask AI, go through this case, find me all the pictures of a green shirt. That would speed things up. But like all tools, we can't just hand it over to AI and go, is this guy innocent or guilty?
right.
That we can't do, in my
Yeah,
opinion.
I think that we're decades, if not centuries, away from allowing AI to do that. I think the human element has to be involved.
And I
I,
think it's a double-edged sword, isn't it? The human element makes a lot of mistakes, but it also can consider things that a computer can't. And
that's right.
in order for AI to take over at any substantial level, it would need to be tested over and over and over again and getting the same result, the correct result, time and time again, over and over again for years before we could even consider it. You know what I mean? It would have to have a proven track record. And I don't know how you test it. How do you stress test that? And so like Jack said, we're so far off from that I
Yeah.
just in reality, I don't see it playing a realistic role anytime soon.
No, I mean, even as far as we've came with AI just in the last 5 years is amazing. But
Mhm. Mhm.
yeah, I just don't think we're anywhere near that situation yet. No.
And the future is so foggy. You have some experts that say there's this thing called general artificial intelligence. If you guys have been following along a little bit with the AI that I talk about, general artificial intelligence means basically the level of human intelligence, and that it can really reason and generate its own, like it really is it's really artificial intelligence that we think of, like robots that can make decisions, that can carry on conversations, that can stimulate conversations, that can come up with their own new ideas, right? Some experts say, oh, that's right around the corner. Some experts say it ain't never going to happen. So somewhere between it's just around the corner and it's never going to happen, that's what we're looking at. And so maybe AI never gets that good, or if it does, it's not in our time that we would be able to really rely on it.
Yeah. Hey,
I don't know.
I'm getting jumping a little off topic here, but back to the Karen
No,
Reed
go
case.
ahead. Yeah.
I'm seeing in my um, suggested videos. It's the lawyer and it says live Karen Reed mistrial. What happens next? Was there a mistrial?
That's what it seems like. Yes. Maybe you weren't following the comments, but earlier in the comments, that's what came out. It was a mistrial.
Oh, I didn't see that. Oh my God. What caused the mistrial? I'm gonna have to watch this at some point
Deadlocked
here
jurors, I guess. They couldn't agree on it. I think if Rhonda's still in, Rhonda seems to know about it.
That's a hung jury. That's different than a mistrial. Mistrial is a complete. It says mistrial.
The jury was deadlocked. That's what Rhonda says. The jury was deadlocked.
Oh, okay. Okay. I thought maybe something had been revealed that happened that was not a hung jury. It's something, some kind of misconduct that they declared a mistrial. Okay. All right.
Yeah. Pretty wild stuff. That's an interesting case. I think I'd like to know a little bit more about it.
Yeah, there's a couple of videos. I think Susan posted one and Doc posted one that will give you a pretty good rundown of the case.
Okay, cool.
It's in the office on our Discord.
So I don't recall. Makes a good point. One lawyer got in trouble when AI couldn't find a case, so it made one up. And this is one of the major flaws in AI right now, and that is that it's called a hallucination. So it will give you the wrong answer, or it will literally just make one up. Because it's trying to please you. It's trying to give you the answer. It's trying to fulfill your need. And one of the things that it oftentimes does, and even in ChatGPT was asked, can you make me, write me a paper with correct citations and sources? And when they went and checked some of the citations, they didn't exist.
Oh, wow.
AI just made it up. Here's an article that doesn't exist, but it sounds good.
Wow.
And they put it in there and they cited it. Yep.
That's
where we are with AI. We're not nearly ready to hand over anything important to AI's reasoning, I guess. It just doesn't have the reasoning.
Yeah. That's crazy. To make up a fake case just to satisfy the answer. That's crazy, right, man.
Because you're trying to what? Satisfy the human prompt. You're trying to give it the answer that it wants. And so it doesn't have reasoning. It just wants to do what it's asked, right? And if it has to cheat to do that, it will.
That's not good. That would definitely has to be corrected.
That needs to be figured out. Absolutely.
Yeah.
T1 says, okay, no more needs to be said. AI is out. Yeah. Really cool. If you guys have any questions or comments, shoot them up right now before we close out. We're getting towards the end of the live here, but if you have any questions or comments about the show or about any cases, shoot them off now. As I said, next week we are going to talk about the state of Alabama versus Brittany Smith. And so if you haven't seen that documentary yet, you're going to want to check that one out before we meet next week. And we will all be able to speak on this one with some sort of backstory, with some sort of knowledge base. So go and check that one out. State of Alabama versus Brittany Smith right now on Netflix.
Yeah, I wish that one was a little longer. Like I said, I would have appreciated a little bit more information. It didn't have to be a lot, but maybe another 10 or 15 minutes to fill in some of the questions that I have. That I remember watching this way back, not long after it came out on Netflix, and I had questions then. They came back as I did the review last night, and yeah, it's an interesting documentary. It raises a number of questions.
Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah.
And we are always on the lookout for your guys' feedback about what documentary we should do next. We have a list going on our Discord. Just kind of trying to find some that maybe string together. We did How to Fix a Drug Scandal a few weeks ago, and then we did Exhibit A. They kind of fit together. I'm trying to curate some documentaries that you guys are interested in. So let me know if you like a documentary, or if one of them, even if you don't like a documentary, that doesn't mean it was a bad episode. It's just we found out you don't like one. That's cool. No problem there. So always looking for the next one, trying to stay updated, maybe selecting documentaries that are currently airing on Netflix or another one of the main streaming systems
Yeah, I
platforms.
mean, there's a lot of good ones that would be harder for people to find. I've mentioned a few. Murder in the Bayou. That's on Paramount Plus, Showtime.
Mhm.
That's been out for years. It's a great documentary. I don't know if everybody would have an option to view that though, but to show the level of corruption that can occur within the county, the city, state level, going pretty far up the ladder, to be quite frank about it. And so many of these young women died in that particular documentary. I think it was 13 or 14 that were killed. It's shocking how that all played out. And there are other ones too, but they're older. They're a little bit more difficult to for people to find and view. So yeah, more current ones are fine. There's a lot of good ones out there. We did American Nightmare. That was God.
That was a good one.
Oh man, really good one. Anyway,
And maybe we'll have to do a greatest hits episode where we talk about which ones in the last month we liked or something, a little year in review. Maybe we'll do that at the end of the year. Sounds fun to me. I'm, as I said, I enjoy checking out documentaries. I love talking about movies and documentaries, and keep your requests coming out there, everybody. And really appreciate all your comments. Lots of comments today. Little reminder, we're doing our premiere a little earlier than we had in the past. So this will be the regular time from now on. Hopefully, you guys can join us. If not, check it on the replay. We always enjoy your comments. Paradise, I don't recall, says Paradise Lost would be excellent, and maybe you have to check that one out too. It sounds
yeah,
familiar.
that's the West Memphis 3.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah,
Paradise
definitely
Lost.
check that one out.
Yeah, that's what it's called. It's there would be. Well, we couldn't do that one in one episode. There's too much. That would
There's
have to
just
be
too much.
yeah, because it's 3 parts to Paradise Lost.
Maybe we'll have to check that one out. Maybe an
Yeah,
extended long episode we can do.
Yeah, it would have to be because there's just far too much to encompass. It would have to be a really long premiere and a live following. It's yeah, it encompasses years. I mean, it goes for well, hell, it's still going. What am I saying? Yeah, there you go, Paradise Lost.
Interesting. Well, definitely have to consider checking that one out. Today we watched documentary. I'm sorry. Today we watched Exhibit A. I'm reading the picture as I'm speaking. Today we watched. We talked about Exhibit A. So just to wrap up on that one, if you guys love forensics and you want to know a little bit more about it, I think it's a good touch of the iceberg. I think it opens our eyes to a lot of the inconsistencies or inaccuracies when it comes to forensic sciences, and not to say monkey business, but mistakes that can be made in the processes. So really cool documentary series. If you're into that, if you're not that into the science of it, you might want to skip this one, but I found it to be really cool.
I did too, because T put up a good comment. The prosecutor need to be held accountable for their actions and decisions. I agree with that. This impenetrable wall of immunity, I think, needs to go away, because it's created a lot of problems. So if you got a prosecutor, we talk about this case, these 4 cases right here. If you have a prosecutor that understands that this stuff is a little technical, and if I can kind of dazzle the jury with some bullshit here and get him thinking one way, I sold my case. And I think that's wrong. Now, if a prosecutor doesn't know, I mean, I don't know how you could prove that. Maybe there's a way. I don't really know. That's really more of up to a defense attorney to look. What he's told you, that's not the way it works. You need to understand the fact, the truth. I don't know, but yeah, I agree with T. This immunity, complete immunity for a prosecutor,
or at least reformed. You know what I mean? Like, we need to reform it. Maybe there are some elements that we keep, but it definitely needs some sort of reform.
It does. I agree.
Well, I think that's it for today then, guys. Appreciate you coming along and hanging out with us for Documentary Club, a place for documentary lovers. Go ahead and join the club if you want by liking and subscribing to the channel, or considering becoming a member as well. Appreciate to all the members out there. Got quite a few members in the chat today. I don't recall Kay. Let's see here. I don't want to forget anybody who's a member. Let's see, just Rhonda. And I think that's it for the members. I'd like to give you guys a special shout out, at least when I think of it. And Becca Chu also is a member of the channel, and I appreciate you guys helping us keep the channel going, helping us get, giving me, the ability to continue to make videos. And those memberships are really important at helping me do that. So as we build the channel, appreciate you guys getting in early on and walking through these documentaries with us, and we use them as a springboard to talk about other cases as well, just like in the live. So consider joining a live next week if there's a case in the future that you really want to talk about and get your say in there. Otherwise, Jack and I are happy to talk for hours. So
been a great combo today. Really, really good.
Yeah, me too. And great group of people. I think I like this time slot. But as I said, we'll have to see you on the next one. So as I always like to say, I am Jeff.
I'm Jack.
And this has been Documentary Club. We'll see you on the next one.